Well, so many of us have been glued to the TV, glued to our phones, wanting the very up-to-date information on what's going on in Ukraine. Of course, lots of that comes from social media, but within that, a web of misinformation too. Take this video on Twitter, for example. It shows paratroopers dropping into Ukraine. Well, actually, it's not a recent video, and it's not even in Ukraine. But yet it has over 100 retweets. In the comments, others have even called it out as not being real. But a researcher at UNLV says interacting with this sort of thing is part of the problem too, and it's part of her effort to combat misinformation.
Lately, almost every waking hour, Mary Blankenship is pouring into her work, researching misinformation and disinformation online through UNLV's School of Public Policy. And that's just on the side. She's also a graduate student in chemistry.
I'm most concerned with finding out the truth, especially as a scientist, and I think that carries over to the policy as well.
She first started digging into online misinformation following 1 October.
That kind of led me on a segue to all this other Twitter research.
But now it's personal. Mary was born and has spent much of her life in Ukraine.
We have a sense of guilt and uselessness about this situation because so many of our close ones are, and just fellow Ukrainians are over there suffering.
Is what you're doing in this sphere of misinformation, disinformation, in a way your part in this?
I really hope so.
Mary calls it information pollution. Disinformation, spreading false narratives like Russian propaganda with the intent to harm, and misinformation, the spread of false claims without intent to harm.
One of the biggest forefronts of this war is the information war that's going on.
And Blankenship says in the invasion of Ukraine, much of the information pollution is led by the Russian government and seen by social media users around the world, largely political and military disinformation intended to intimidate.
And it's made to look like Russia is just crushing them and everyone's surrendering or welcoming. So misinformation and disinformation has the greatest chance of spreading when it creates emotions of fear, of anger, especially towards another group.
Just last night, I Stand With Putin became a trending hashtag. As Blankenship looked into it, she found it was largely bots tweeting the hashtag. Her recommendations for us as we follow the war: find local sources of news, report misinformation, but don't interact with it by sharing or commenting. You can use the free sites Botometer and Hoaxy, and by just entering usernames, it will tell you the likelihood the user's a bot.
Why it's so dangerous is that it shifts the attention from the actual policy topic to discuss irrelevant facts. And so that to me is really relevant, and so why I'm continuing to focus on it.
Not just in the invasion of Ukraine, but our everyday life on social media. I'm Drew Andre, Fox 5 News, Local.